Berg podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And we're talking about the delicate balance, how fragile the schedule can be midsummer when we go from feeling right in our comfort spot with the amount of work we have, amount of people we have, to almost feeling over the edge to some extent.
Yeah, it happens every year, right? We talk about it all the time. This is like Christmas. It comes every year. You shouldn't be surprised. But every year you get to that point and you feel like we're good. Maybe we got a couple people, if we can find a couple really good pieces to plug in, we'd be right there. And then, everybody's feeling that. And you lose a guy here or there, you add a job, you get some extra work off of a job you have. And all of a sudden you're not finished the jobs you started, and you're started the jobs that you had planned to start. And you're feeling really thin, trying to balance that with the guys, and the guys feel it. And it always happens at this time of year. And coincidentally, it is always also very warm this time of year here. So, you got guys who are working and pressing through really hot conditions and humid conditions, and they're trying to get jobs done. And they got me or someone like me calling them saying like, hey, I saw your schedule. You got 2 weeks left. Can you shave a day or two off? Can I have a guy or two? Do you need that piece of equipment? All those conversations that happen this time of year, every year, but they don't make the guys, because it happens every year, does not make anybody feel any better about it. It doesn't make me feel calmer, and it doesn't make the guys feel less stressed when I'm calling, trying to get equipment or people and redistribute things.
Yeah, it's funny because it does feel like it swings too from like week to week, month to month, right? And I know, I was out for a couple of days last week, but even talking to Tracy, she was like, I think we're in a good spot. We're going to take some ads down. Then at the end of the week, it was like, okay, we're not in a good spot. We need 3 or 4 more people. And it just vacillates so quickly based on, like you said, how quickly things change. Where did a change order happen? Now guys aren't going to get free. Did something else come online that pushed the schedule? And
even Brian, Ford, I was having a discussion with Ford about it. So there can even be other changes. A change that happened recently that impacted us pretty quickly is Pico did not change the rules, but a change in an interpretation of a Pico rule has them wanting everything in the ground completely before we put utility services in. So the electrical trench is a big piece on a home line job, on a home project, because they want to be able to have the electric in so they can run the heater, or they can run the air conditioner, or they can dehumidify, or they can manage the temperature inside the house to finish the house. So it's important. And we didn't view it as a big step with our stormwater in a lot of cases, with the modern way that you have to build a lot of stormwater into projects on smaller, one house, single lot or 2 or 3 lot subdivisions. And so we were always leaving the basins, which were nowhere near the electric, to do last, so that we could do the earthwork.
It's also part of sequence.
Right. Make the conversion. Right. And so part of the conversation I was having with Scott and Dylan was that, to simplify it, conservation does not care what Pico's rules are, and Pico doesn't care what conservation's rules are.
Right.
And Rotelli doesn't care what either of the rules are. You know what I mean? Like the home builder, whether it be Rotelli or anybody else we work with, they don't care what anybody's rules are. They need that electric in. And so the balance of trying to figure it out, but in the change of, for whatever the cause was that put us in a situation where we had to do the storm before we could do the electric, we now had multiple houses that we had built planning to schedule it the way that conservation would want it. And we had to race to get stuff in so we could get the electric. But on the flip side, we had projects we were starting that we weren't anticipating having to do the storm because we had to race to get the electric. So it didn't just impact a couple projects, it impacted a lot of projects for our special projects division. So they started to feel pressure there that like, how are we going to get all these jobs done? So sometimes it's not even anything we did. It's not extra work. It's not less people. It's not any of those things. Sometimes it's completely outside your control.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing about this, and this is, rhetoric, but it's a reality. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Sure.
And that goes with maximizing your day. You can sit around and fret about things that could possibly happen. But the reality is, if you get as much done as you can get that day, and you do it the next day and the next day, you get through it. If you spend too much time thinking about the what ifs and the what coulds, it doesn't get any more done. So it's more about trying to just focus on what you're doing, get as much done as you can, and move to the next day. Because, that's the problem with it, is that people that we work for, or different people, they have different interests than we do. our interest is safe work that we get done as quickly as we can. What we understand that the clients have other, but then again, it comes back to the communication with them of understanding, like how
Right.
are we going to make this happen? And, you know, it's typical and it's funny, but, you know, dates get moved or dates don't get moved, but extra work get added. And you're like, physically, those two things cannot be the same. Like you can't either move the date up and get the same amount of work done or add more work and keep the date the same. Like logically, that just doesn't, you know,
Right.
doesn't happen. And so that's where, you know, I've seen in the last couple of weeks, like teams jump and help other teams knock something out because they had a space or something like that. So it's really just a big, what are we going to call it? Like not a circus, but you're just keeping the pieces moving at the same time.
Yeah, you just keep juggling.
It's a juggling act.
Yeah.
It's a juggling
right?
act.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even, you know, it gets hard. We took Tom and reinserted Tom back into a project, and he's doing great work. But when we know as a company and as an industry, we know that if you pull your foreman and you switch foreman or switch crews midstream, it will create a problem. Like it's not going to work as smooth as it could, even if you replaced it with just as experienced or qualified as a crew or better, because there's things they know, there's a relationship they built. And so trying to manage those pieces as you move things in and out, you know, and specifically on that one, actually this morning, I'm standing there and we're trying to figure a couple things out, and I'm trying to juggle, right? So I made a joke. I was talking to Jack, and I said I didn't realize that I had promoted myself to general superintendent again, and I'm just going to be on all the jobs and I'm going to try and help. But that's where we are. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We have office people, you know, project managers and this estimator's assistant who are now in the field trying to help and get things done. And you got me trying to step in where they would be and say like, okay, so I'm going to do this piece, you know, and so we're doing that on multiple jobs to try and get through. But I'm standing there and Tom and I are trying to figure out something and set a laser up and get some pipe runs figured out. And Carol comes up, and Carol found a trash bag somewhere, and she's now collecting trash off the site. Not inherently our job, but she turned to one of the laborers and she said, "Hey, I set this trash bag here because when there's nothing to do, when we're waiting before we can start, I just walk around and pick up trash because I want to stay busy." And it's a variation on what you're saying, but it's the same, right? In other words, like the reason Carol's so productive is because she never stops being productive. So is it productive for Carol to pick up trash in terms of us getting the job done? Not inherently, not if it's not our trash, but at the end of the day, if the owner gets there and happens to pull in at that moment, not only is no one standing around, but there's less trash on the site. You know what I mean? So not probably Carol's job,
right.
but she's staying busy. And that's one of the biggest things. It's always hard when you step onto a site and you don't want to judge, right? You're like looking at it, but you're like, well, why are they doing this? Why is this happening? Why didn't they do this? And I don't have all the information, so I shouldn't make a judgment. But if everyone's busy and doing something, it immediately puts me in a sense like, okay, we're doing the best we can here. And then I might have some questions, but I don't have a question about why people are like just standing around.
Yeah. And not fake busy, right? Like that,
No.
that's pretty easily identified when
Right.
someone's fake busy. And I think I like what you're saying there with Carol is she's, instead of standing there waiting to be told what to do next, she's looking for the next thing to do.
She's looking for the next thing to do.
And it may not always be sequentially like where her skills will be needed the next, but she's doing something productive with that.
And
time.
not taking away from the team in the
Right,
sense of,
right.
you think about it, like if the three of us were on a job and we're working, and if every 5 minutes while Ford's trying to figure something out, you and I come and say, hey, how can we help you? And
Yeah,
it's
what
like,
should we
well,
do next?
What would you like me to do
that's it.
next, Ford? And so then Ford has to stop trying to run the job and say, okay, well, Dan, you go do this. Brian, you go do this.
Yeah.
Then restart what he's doing. And that stop and go, that lost time
Yeah.
is difficult. And along similar lines, I walked over, and when I said it to Jack, I was like, but congratulations, you've been promoted to coal chute operator, because he's sitting there running the coal chute on a truck because we have a sub truck running. And so the sub truck is not going to get out and operate his own coal chute. And we're not going to devote a laborer just to do it. So Jack's just keeping an eye on it and doing that while he's doing other things.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like perfect example, like Jack, it may not be the best use of Jack, but that needed to be done. And Jack enabled someone else to be able to do their job because he just stepped in and said, I'm going to do this one piece and I'll do what I'm doing while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
A lot of that, I think, and like you, obviously, both of you know way better than I, but some of that is, I think, planning and preparation on the foreman's part, right? So like if you empower your folks with the right things to do and enough things to do, so that you can stand back, lead, manage, insert yourself where and when necessary, and then fill in the gaps. That probably is a crucial piece of what we're talking about in some ways, right? Like, guys got to have initiative, guys got to want to do it. But in some ways, they at least have to know the framework of what they're trying to get accomplished so that they can continue to look for that next opportunity to jump in or to do the right thing.
I was out on, today's Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know what it is right now. But I was out the other day, and it was interesting because we never did this back in my day, but it was just a different time. But like, there was like a little huddle in the morning, and it was like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and like all that stuff. And it was like, that is important because not everybody knows what the next thing is, but when you get a good crew running together, they already know what the next thing is, or like,
Sure.
it's just as interesting. It was well run. It was like told to do the things that needed to be done that day and how we were going to try and accomplish them. But it was just interesting to me. That was like, okay. I mean, that makes logical sense because not everybody, but like, you get a good crew, a couple, you see some of the old timers, a couple nods, and it's like, okay, we're like, if they ended doing something yesterday, it wasn't finished, they know to go back and start that in the morning type of scenario. You're not like to go back through it. So it definitely is but yeah, I think it's picking your head up sometimes. And, we were laughing about that because I was actually telling Levi this today. I said, we're putting some pipe in and I threw a piece of waste or whatever into the trench. She's like, no, I have a trash bag for that. I was like, but no, any true pipe crew, it's a time capsule. You got to put like something from whatever, your Wawa bag or something in there that like, and we were joking about it. Sometimes you dig up a job site and there's like old bottles or old glass or something that in the trenches because whoever was working there had like an old Pepsi can from like, because I think he found something from like 1908, like an old glass bottle from like something, but like it's like a little bit of evidence of when the work was actually done to get it done through there. But she's like, no, I got a trash bag over there. But, the cleanliness of the site, the organization of the site, even if if the work isn't done, but it's clean and it looks good, for the people that don't understand what we're doing, they have less questions because it looks like it's supposed to look, even if it's not completed.
Mm-hmm.
But something completely unrelated, but a conversation happened today is I'm walking around Longwood and we're looking at it and we're close. I mean, Longwood, this isn't now like a pipe dream of when Longwood will be done. We're there. We're going to close out this job in the next 2.5 months. It's happening. There may be a little bit of, bleed afterwards where we got to clean some stuff up or they want other work done, but substantially we're getting there very quickly now. Every day that site gets smaller. Every week we give another piece to them that's we can't go to anymore. And we're walking around and Dylan said to me, he said, what's crazy is I look at this job as we close it out and it might like upset people who work there, might upset Longwood. And he said, but I'm not that impressed. Like I heard like, this like Turkish something marble and like all these things, this special granite. But I see it and it's all just, it's like, yeah. And he said, don't you think so? And I was like, actually, I'm going to take the complete opposite stance. I was like, I agree about the material. I said, but what they've done is we just built something that looks like it's 200 years old. I said, so it took effort, like in an odd sense, right? Like normally you try and do something to make something as new as possible, right? Like you go and wash your car and you want it to look like the day you bought it. If someone really detailed your car nicely, it would look as nice as the day you bought it, minus any, like if you dented it.
Stone chips.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? But like the interior, it would like be shiny. There'd be no dirt, like in stuff that you wouldn't do yourself. Right. And when we try and do something, that's what we try and hand somebody, a finished product that is perfect. But it was never about it looking new. It was about it looking old. Like
Perfect.
but
old.
But
matching at least.
Right. And matching what's there.
Yeah.
And then making you feel like you're walking through a garden that someone just planted, not just planted, but that just a garden
has existed.
That has existed.
Right. Since Mr. DuPont himself.
since Mr. DuPont planted it, 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I didn't really think about it that way. I was like, and on top of that, you're saying there's nothing impressive about the thing, and we're standing on a building and nobody knows it. They think they're standing on a garden, and they're not. They're standing on concrete that we just poured that looks like it's 200 years old with trees around it that they just planted that has tons of irrigation under it. It has, it melts the sidewalks. Then below that is electric. Then below that is a building, is this styrofoam roof. Then below that is waterproofing. Then below that is a building. And they think they're standing in a field. I was like, that's what's crazy about it. And then we stand back forward and I said, but here's the craziest thing. And I said, and someday we're going to come here and we're going to stand here and it's probably going to mean nothing to almost everybody. But we're standing at the trench drains that run all the way out from what they call Oil Tank Hill, all the way across the LRS. And it's like 800 and something feet. And it is dead straight. I don't mean like, when we say straight, like, that's straight. I mean, like if you put a pin on one side and a pin on the other and you put a rope right along the top of it, it does not vary. It is straight. There's zero variation. It's insane.
Yeah.
And I said to him, like, this isn't like we sort of did it. Like we built that. We built everything around it to end up at a point where we put in 850 foot of trench drain that are, what are they, 18 inches a piece?
Segments.
And they're perfect. And then we poured concrete to it, and that's perfect. And then the sod is next to it, and that is also perfect. And I was like, I don't mean it in a bad way, but I don't care inherently. Like my yard doesn't look like that, and I'm not going to do anywhere near what it would take to make it look like that.
And most people won't notice.
And most people are not going to notice.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to step back and take it in. That like, look at what we've done. You know, the building's neat, right? And like the plants, it's going to be, it's all great. But it's going to be those little things that I look at, and the fact that we built something that nobody realizes we built anything, which may speak the most to what we did, you know, and how few companies could have seen it through, you know. And that's sort of what I said to Dylan. I said, like, at the end of the day, no matter who bid this and who did it, it was going to be a struggle for them because it's hard to understand their expectations and how inflexible they are. And how much it's got to be the way they want, and they don't know what that way is. Like, and I don't mean to badmouth them, but they want it to look like something, you know. And it's like when someone says, like, I want it to look just like, I want it to really wow me. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, I mean, I want to be like moved. And basically, we're trying to build something that moves somebody, but we don't know what that is. And the prints are almost irrelevant, you know. But when they're done, the prints will say that we were going to build exactly what we built. And if you went back, in principle, it would say we're going to build what we built. Mm. But in that interim, it becomes really hard to build it effectively. And so the fact that we're here now, you know, whatever it is, almost 3 years later, and we're standing here.
More than 3 years.
It's pretty crazy to stand there and look at it and know. And some of these guys that have been there, fortunately and unfortunately, not many of our guys saw the start to the finish because it was just too much to ask. Even if they were employed and started there and are still employed, it was too much to ask for them to stay there. But
I think that the thing that you're saying, though, the reality of it is that when you're there day to day, any job, the details blur, right? I mean, you just like, I was over at that horse farm project, right? And like, you know, they're kind of on a similar level. They have similar expectations. Yep. And, you know, we're doing whatever we're doing. And you're like, okay, like you just seen it. You've seen 100 of them. You've seen 1,000 of them. And you're just, now when that thing's all done and you drive by it, you're like, oh, wow, cool. But like when you're in the middle of it and you're like digging a trench or you're trying to put a pipe in that doesn't go where they think it should go or whatever, like all of those details are just out the window until you like can step back and like look at it cleanly.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's why I think it would be of value to take like, you know, not all the guys, but like a lot of the key guys, when they're done, I think it would be good for Longwood. I mean, if they they had something where these guys, all these trades, you know, all the trades and Bancroft and everybody else that was involved and like got to step back and see the finished thing. Now, it is not going to mean to most of them what it means to the people that really like love Longwood because it's not our thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Hey, you're talking to a yearly member here. I mean,
I am talking to a former member, maybe once in future, perhaps. But you know what I mean, Brian? Like, if you and I both went, I'll go because Aaron wants to go.
Sure, yeah.
You would go because you enjoy going.
I would go. I just, you
know, and so that's different.
Yeah.
It's a little too much for Brian right now.
I mean,
he needs a moment.
Hey, 3 years is a long time. I need a break.
Long time.
I need a break.
But I mean, I think that's with all of our work. Like, you know, we always talk about how what we do is not seen, right? Until it's either an issue or whatever. Because we're on another job where we're repairing something. Mm-hmm. And it was buried 15 foot in the ground. And I actually saw one of our competitors doing it somewhere else. And nobody knows what's underneath the macadam, right? They're just driving on it, parking on it, doing their thing. Until something has a failure. And then all of a sudden, you're digging up something 15 foot in the ground to fix it. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, didn't even know it was there. Why are you in my way? Why is this area blocked off?
Yeah.
And, this is, we read the infrastructure books. Our infrastructure in the U.S. gets like a D at best or something like that because we have a lot of old stuff.
Yeah.
It's too costly to fix. So basically we only fix the stuff that's in real bad shape. But there is so much stuff that goes on underneath that isn't seen until there is a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we do. Like, there's no way around that.
And I think like, especially in excavation, right? We say it, but we don't erect buildings. Like most of what we do happens from the ground down, and a lot of it gets buried and hidden and goes away and looks perfectly as though it didn't exist.
Yes.
And then they do cool stuff on top of it, right? In most cases. And so like, I think that it probably is easy for our guys to get like lost in the minutia of doing something that when you drive past and you see the finished result, like 90% of their effort and work is hidden. But I think like, especially in this scenario, like you're talking about, Dan, I think that the what that project has done and the way it's caused us to endure and change some things, I think that'll mean different things to some of our folks.
The best example on that site may be at the end of the day, the best example of that attitude, of that ground down attitude and how much it means. Because make no mistake, in my mind, there's a couple books that are written in like Eastern philosophy, like going back to when I was in college, right? And one of the theories is like, if you built a house, the void of the house is what actually creates like usability, like value.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could build you a solid block of your house.
Sure.
That you can't walk in and you can't get into. It's completely useless. So what you see is the house, but the actual value is in the vacancy that's inside of the house, right? Like a wall is useless and you have a window. What actually created the value was the window, was the void that you made in the thing that was solid. And that plays into a lot of what we do underground. What you don't see, the vacancies that we create, is what creates value. You can have a building all you want, but if it has no electric, has no sewer, has no water, you got nothing.
Yeah. Or nothing solid to attach it to.
Or nothing
right?
solid. I mean, you can't build it on a foundation that doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
So there's that piece, but the best example of it there may be that plenum. So for people who don't know, who haven't been at Longwood, right? So this entire greenhouse is made to run on a natural airflow system that they're going to cool it and they're going to feed all the fresh air in from outside, from a distance away. There's 3,000 foot of pipe underneath the ground running in, I think it's 12 sections. There's a bunch of sections of huge pipe. We're talking 48 to 60 inch pipe running from a wall that looks like nothing. Like it's just a slope. And then at the bottom of the slope is this like concrete lip, looks like a retaining wall. There's a retaining wall, but in the retaining wall is a hole that's maybe 18 inches vertically tall. And it's just series of 18-inch slots divided with a vertical concrete piece. So it looks like some sort of decorative retaining wall that maybe if you put light behind it would look like you did it just to make it look nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all the air feeds out of that building. There was 2 guys working in the plenum, 3 guys working in the plenum this week. 2 of them have been on the site for, 9 months. And they were told what they had to do. And they were like, okay, but where's that? And they're like, well, it's the plenum. It's on the bottom. So they climbed down into this thing. There's a ladder. They've opened this manhole that they didn't know where it went. And they climbed down into it. And it's like, there's a bunch of pipes down here. They had been there for 9 months.
Yeah.
They had no idea it was there because that's how good they were at hiding everything that was there.
Yeah.
Everything that made it work is not, you can't see it. So I think, that's a big piece of what we do. And as we work towards the end of Longwood and closing it out, that's important to remember for the guys that are there and for the people that aren't. That when we're done, it's going to look like we weren't there. And that's the biggest compliment to our team as they fight through the heat and, the rain and the hurricane and the runoff and thunderstorms and everything else. You're building something that nobody's going to notice. But that is where the appreciation lies. If they don't notice, then you did your job because you built something that they didn't know wasn't there before.
Well, I mean, we joke about that too, but like if you're a chef and you go somewhere else, you're like testing the food and you're like, they did a good job. Or like if you do trim carpentry and you see someone's miter joints and it's like not good, you think about it too. So it's like that whole thing where you're like, you're noticing the details. So if you go on vacation and you see like a curb line that, looks like a roller coaster and you're like, you're like, it's amazing what you look at when you do that for a living, or if you're somehow close to it, you're just like, or, my dad was a welder. So you see welds and you're like, oh, that welder didn't. I mean, it's structurally fine, but it definitely was not the most
just not pretty.
Exactly. So it's the same thing with us. It's like, you see something or you see a job site or you see whatever, and you're always noticing the things just because that's what your eye's drawn to, because that's what you're looking at on a daily basis. You're like, that doesn't look quite right, but it passed and someone paid for it. So it's all good.
Interesting. Yeah. So we started with the fragile nature of balancing summer work through the busiest of our seasons. Got to the idea that most of what we do goes totally unnoticed, but is incredibly important and meaningful. And that's probably a decent place to wrap it up, I think. So thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope you got something from this, and we hope you come back for another episode.